For 3 years, I convinced myself I was the crazy one, the jealous wife who couldn't handle her husband's female best friend. I swallowed her insults, ignored his excuses, and pretended everything was fine. But you can only be pushed so far before you stop making excuses for the person who is supposed to be your #1 fan. This story is about drawing a line in the sand. If you've ever felt invisible in your own relationship, you know what I'm talking about. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the moment the tables turn. He told me he'd always put me first. I can still feel that promise hanging in the air from 3 years ago. As real as the scent of pine and damp earth from the trees around us. It was October, and the evening air by the Scioto Mile had a crisp bite to it. He'd planned the whole day perfectly, a late lunch at our favorite Italian place, a long walk along the riverfront as the sun bled into shades of orange and purple, painting the Columbus skyline. He pointed out the constellations appearing one by one in the darkening sky. I remember thinking that nothing had ever felt so right. Then he stopped walking. He took both my hands in his palms warm against my chilled fingers. His voice, usually so confident and easygoing, had a slight tremor. "Kimberly," he said. And my heart did a little flip. He got down on one knee, pulling a small, dark velvet box from his jacket pocket. The city lights across the water blurred into 1,000 glittering diamonds. "From the moment I met you, my life has made sense. Whatever happens, whatever challenges we face, I promise you this, you will always be my #1. My priority. Always." I said yes. Of course. My own voice was a choked whisper. The promise was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. For the first year of our marriage, I lived inside the warmth of those words. They were the foundation upon which I thought we were building our life. But foundations can crack so slowly, you don't notice until the whole house starts to feel unsteady. The cold drafts don't come all at once. They start as tiny, imperceptible whispers of air. And my cold draft had a name, Nell. Luther and she had been friends since college. A bond forged in late-night study sessions and cheap beer. A history that predated me by a decade. I respected that. I have friends I've known my whole life. I understand the sanctity of those connections. I wasn't threatened. I was ready to be her friend. 2. I walked into that first meeting at a trendy brewery in the short north with a genuine smile on my face, ready to embrace the most important person from my husband's past. The place was loud, buzzing with the happy chaos of a Friday night. The air was thick with the yeasty smell of craft beer and truffle fries. I spotted Luther at a high-top table in the back, his head thrown back in laughter. The woman next to him, Nell, was laughing too, her hand resting casually on his forearm. As I approached, Luther saw me and his face lit up. "Hey, honey, over here." Nell's laughter died instantly. Her head turned, and for one unguarded second, before she could arrange her features into something polite, I saw it. It wasn't just indifference. It was a flash of pure, unadulterated annoyance, as if my very presence was an unwelcome interruption. The moment was fleeting, but I saw it. Then, the mask of social grace snapped into place. "So, you're Kimberly," she said, her voice an octave too bright. She slid off her stool. She was taller than I expected, dressed in sharp, expensive-looking clothes that made my simple jeans and sweater feel inadequate. She extended a hand. "It's so great to finally meet you." Her grip was like a vice, her fingers surprisingly strong, and then I felt it a distinct, deliberate pressure from the tip of her fingernail digging into the soft skin of my palm. It was sharp enough to make me flinch internally. but subtle enough that if I'd said anything, I would have sounded insane. I pulled my hand back. A faint, red crescent mark already fading on my skin. I told myself I was imagining things. For the next hour, I became invisible. It was a masterclass in social exclusion. Her entire body was angled towards Luther. She'd launch into stories that began with, "Luth, remember that time in Dayton?" Leaving no room for me to enter the conversation. I tried a few times. Asking questions. Offering comments. But my words were met with a brief, dismissive smile before she would turn her attention right back to my husband. I felt like a ghost at my own table. At one point, wanting to feel connected to him, I squeezed onto the bench seat between them. Nell's smile tightened at the edges. Not 5 minutes later, she stood up, grabbing her purse. "Well, this was fun," she announced to Luther, completely ignoring me. "I've got an early start tomorrow. I'll text you." She gave Luther a hug, a lingering one, before turning and walking away without a single backward glance in my direction. The silence she left behind was heavy. As Luther and I walked to the car, the knot of unease in my stomach had grown into a heavy stone. She seemed energetic. I finally said, the most neutral word I could find. Luther was beaming, completely oblivious. "Yeah, that's Nell. She's the best. It just takes her a while to warm up to people. She can be a little intimidating, I guess." He wrapped an arm around me. "Don't worry. You're just overthinking it. Honey, she'll love you once she gets to know you." "You're overthinking it." It became his mantra, the magic phrase that absolved him of having to see what was right in front of him. It was easier to believe I was sensitive than to believe his best friend was unkind. The pattern was set. The little digs, the subtle acts of exclusion, continued. The worst was at a 4th of July BBQ at his friend Mark's house the following summer. It was a perfect day. The sun warm on our skin, the air smelling of sizzling burgers and sunscreen. I was in the middle of telling a funny, embarrassing story about a recent presentation I'd given at my design firm where my laptop died mid-sentence. People were laughing with me. The atmosphere light and friendly. From across the circle of lawn chairs, Nell let out a loud, braying laugh that cut through the chatter. "Oh my God. Kimberly, your voice is just so adorable when you get worked up," she said, her words dripping with a saccharine condescension. "It gets all high and squeaky, like a little chipmunk." The friendly laughter around us sputtered and died. Mark's wife suddenly found the condensation on her glass fascinating. Another friend cleared his throat and took a long sip of his beer. The air grew thick with awkwardness. A hot, prickling blush spread from my neck all the way to my ears. I felt my smile freeze on my face. In that moment, I wasn't a 29-year-old professional. I was a 13-year-old girl being ridiculed in the school cafeteria. My eyes darted to Luther, a silent plea for him to step in, to defend me, to do something. He saw my expression. I know he did. He just offered a tight, uncomfortable smile, reached over to pat my knee in a placating gesture, and announced to the group, "All right. Who wants another beer?" He pushed himself out of his chair and headed for the cooler, effectively erasing the moment. He didn't defend me. He just changed the channel, leaving me stranded in my humiliation. That was the day I stopped trying. I built a wall. I didn't need that slow drip poison in my life. So I stopped going. If an email chain went around about a group dinner and I saw Nell's name on it, a sudden migraine would appear. If Luther mentioned a weekend get-together, she'd be at. An urgent work project would conveniently land on my desk. It took a few months. But Luther finally cornered me. We were in the kitchen on a Tuesday night. The familiar hum of the dishwasher filling the silence between us. "You've been avoiding our friends, Kim," he said. His arms crossed over his chest. His tone wasn't curious, it was accusatory. "I haven't been avoiding our friends," I replied, scrubbing a non-existent spot on the granite countertop. "I've been avoiding Nell." He let out a long, frustrated sigh. The sound of a patient man pushed to his limit. "Babe, are we still on this? It's been years. You're making this so awkward for everyone. She's my best friend." "And I'm your wife," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I turned to face him, the sponge still in my hand. "She is consistently, deliberately cruel to me, Luther, and you either don't see it, or you don't care." "Oh, come on," he said, his hands flying up in exasperation. "So now I'm supposed to choose. I have to pick between my wife and my oldest friend. That's what you want." He was framing it as an unreasonable ultimatum, painting me as the villain who was trying to isolate him. The conversation went nowhere. As it always did, it ended with me retreating, and him acting like he was the one who had been wronged. The suspicion I'd been trying to bury began to push its way to the surface again. One night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. We were on the couch, watching some mindless television show. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "Hey," I started, my voice small. "Can I ask you something, and please just give me a straight answer?" He muted the television, his expression wary. "What is it?" "You and Nell," I began, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "Was there ever anything more, like, did you ever date? Or even just have feelings for each other?" His entire demeanor shifted. The relaxed posture was gone, replaced by a rigid defensiveness. He sat bolt upright. "Are you serious right now, after all this time? That's what you think this is about?" He let out a short, bitter laugh. "I can't believe it. Just because you're insecure, you have to invent this whole soap opera in your head. You know what this is, Kim, it's jealousy. Plain and simple. And frankly, it's not a very good look on you." The words were designed to shame me into silence, and they worked. He had taken my vulnerability and twisted it into a weapon against me. I felt my throat close up, so I did what I had been conditioned to do. I backtracked. I apologized. I allowed him to believe he was the rational one and I was the hysterical, jealous wife. It was easier than fighting a battle I knew I would never win. A few weeks later, the topic turned to our future. Luther was excited, showing me listings for 3-bedroom houses in the suburbs with big yards. "If we're going to be serious about this, we should really up our savings," he said. "All traces of our fight forgotten. Let's increase the automatic transfer into the joint account." "Okay," I said, my voice hollow. "Good idea." It was a good idea. It was what normal, happy couples did. But as I sat at my laptop the next day to adjust the banking details, a cold, clear thought cut through the fog of my unhappiness. Protect yourself. It felt like a betrayal. It felt like giving up. But it also felt like the smartest thing I had done in years. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to a different bank's website. I opened a high-yield savings account. Online. In under 10 minutes. An account only in my name. I set up a small, almost insignificant transfer from each of my paychecks. My escape fund. The final, undeniable proof that I wasn't just overthinking it came last night. It was late. Almost midnight. And the house was quiet. Luther had fallen asleep on the couch again, the television casting a flickering blue light across his face. His phone, which was always by his side, lay on his chest. Screen up. I walked over to wake him, to tell him to come to bed. As I gently touched his shoulder, the phone screen lit up. A banner notification appeared at the top, a new text message. From Nell. I wouldn't have read it. I swear I wouldn't have. But the preview was right there. I could see her message. And I could see the last thing he had sent to her. Right above it. Her message was something mundane about a project at work. His, however, was not. His last message, sent just an hour earlier while I was in the other room, consisted of 3 words and an image. Thinking of you, it said, followed by a single, pulsing, red heart emoji. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My breath caught in my throat. A heart. He sent her a heart. A man who used emojis with the frequency of a solar eclipse. A man who usually just sent me a thumbs up. I stood there, rooted to the spot, the sound of my own heartbeat like a drum in my ears. It was so small, so trivial. A single emoji. But it felt like a gunshot in the silent room. It was a confirmation of a secret intimacy. A private language that I was not a part of. Every instinct told me to explode. To shake him awake and demand an explanation. To scream. To cry. To finally let out all the hurt and anger I had been swallowing for 3 years. But I did nothing. A profound and terrifying numbness washed over me. I felt nothing at all. I calmly reached down, picked the phone off his chest, turned it face down on the coffee table, and walked into our bedroom. I slid under the cold sheets and curled into a ball, my back to the empty space beside me. I stared at the dark wall, listening to his soft, even breathing from the living room. The tears never came. There was only a cold, hard certainty solidifying in my gut. In that moment, I knew this wasn't just about Nell anymore. It was about Luther. And I realized, with a clarity that was both devastating and liberating, that I wasn't scared of losing him. I was just profoundly tired of losing myself. The next morning, the house was offensively bright. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, catching dust motes dancing in the air, making everything look clean and normal and whole. It felt like a lie. Luther was already dressed for work, whistling as he made coffee, the sound grating against my raw nerves. He acted as if nothing was wrong, as if I hadn't spent the night lying rigid beside him, replaying the image of that glowing red heart over and over until it was burned onto the inside of my eyelids. He came over and kissed my cheek, his lips brushing against skin that felt like it belonged to a stranger. Morning. Honey, I'm going to have a late one tonight. Client dinner. Okay, I said. My voice was flat, a monotone I didn't recognize as my own. He paused, his hand on my shoulder, and for a second, I thought he saw it. The chasm that had opened up between us in the night. You okay? You seem quiet. I manufactured a smile. It felt like stretching a cold rubber band across my face. Just tired. Didn't sleep well. Ah. Okay. Well, try to have a good day, he said. And just like that, he was gone. The front door clicking shut behind him, leaving me alone in the silent, sunlit lie of our home. A few weeks passed in a sort of gray fog. I moved through my life on autopilot. I completed my design projects. I talked to my clients. I made dinner. I watched television with my husband. But I wasn't really there. I was floating somewhere above myself, watching a woman go through the motions. The numbness from that night had settled deep into my bones. A permanent chill that no amount of cozy blankets could warm. Luther seemed to sense the distance, the new and unfamiliar space between us. He tried to bridge it with small gestures, bringing home my favorite takeout, suggesting we watch a movie I liked. I accepted them politely, a quiet spectator in my own marriage. Then, one Sunday afternoon, he came into my office, a hopeful, almost boyish enthusiasm on his face that hadn't been there in a long time. "Hey, I have an idea," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "You know our anniversary is in April, and we never really get to do anything big." I kept my eyes on my computer screen. "We usually go out to dinner." "Yeah, but I mean big," he pressed on. "Mark and I were talking, and we thought it would be amazing to rent a big cabin up in Hocking Hills for a long weekend. All of us. Me. You. Mark and his girlfriend Jessica. And Tyler. A whole big group trip. Wouldn't that be fun?" I finally looked at him. He was trying. I could see that. He was throwing a rope across the canyon between us. And a pathetic, desperate part of me wanted to grab it. Maybe this was it. Maybe a trip, surrounded by people, would force a return to normalcy. Maybe I could pretend the heart emoji never happened. Maybe I could unknow what I knew. "A trip?" I asked, my voice cautious. "Yeah, it'll be great. We can go hiking, build a fire, just hang out. It'll be a great way for you to, you know, connect with everyone again." There it was. It wasn't just an anniversary trip for us. It was a project. Project Reintegrate Kimberly. I should have felt angry. But I was too tired for anger. All I felt was a flicker of something that might have been hope. Or maybe just a desire for things to be easy again. "Okay," I said softly. "Yeah. Okay. That could be nice." His face broke into a wide, relieved smile. "Awesome, I'll tell the guys. This is going to be epic." The initial burst of planning and excitement from Luther faded as work and life took over. Weeks went by, and I heard nothing more. The fragile hope I'd allowed myself to feel began to wither. It was early March, and the trip, if it was happening, was only a month away. I was the one who had to bring it up. We were cleaning up after dinner, the clatter of plates and running water filling the kitchen. "So? Did anything ever get decided about that Hocking Hills trip?" I asked, my tone deliberately casual. Luther didn't look up from the pot he was scrubbing. "Oh. Yeah. About that. We talked about it a little more. And the guys kind of decided to make it a no-girlfriend's trip. Just a guy's weekend." I stopped wiping the counter. The dishcloth in my hand was suddenly heavy and cold. "Oh. Yeah. You know how it is," he continued, still not looking at me. "Just a chance for us to hang out. Drink some beer. Be idiots. We can do something just the two of us for our anniversary another time." A familiar wave of disappointment washed over me, but it was mingled with a strange sense of relief. At least I wouldn't have to deal with Nell. Oh God. Was Nell going? My heart stuttered. "Is Nell going?" I asked, my voice tight. No. No. It's just me. Mark. And Tyler. he said quickly. Just the guys. Okay, I said. I forced a smile I didn't feel. That's fine. I get it. I accepted it because it was easier. It was always easier to accept the excuse. To swallow the hurt. Than to start a fight I knew I would be made to feel guilty for. Last night, that fragile piece was shattered. We were on the couch. Watching a basketball game he was invested in. I was scrolling through my phone. Half paying attention. His phone. On the cushion between us, buzzed with a notification. My eyes flicked over to it out of habit. It was a group chat notification. The group name was April Getaway Crew. My blood ran cold. I watched as more messages popped up in quick succession. I saw the names of the senders. Mark, Tyler, and Jessica, Mark's girlfriend. The air was suddenly thin. Hard to breathe. I felt that sensation of floating above myself again. Watching the scene from a distance, Jessica was in the group chat. Jessica. A girlfriend. But the wife whose anniversary the trip was supposedly celebrating, was not. I waited until a commercial break. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. But I kept my voice perfectly level. Perfectly calm. I thought you said the trip was just for the guys. I said, not looking at him. My eyes still fixed on the television. He grunted. His attention on a replay. Yeah. It is. Then why is Jessica in the group chat? The change in the atmosphere was instantaneous. I felt him stiffen beside me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him snatch the phone off the cushion. What are you talking about? He said. His voice suddenly sharp. I saw her name. On the chat notification, I said, finally turning to look at him. Why is she in the group if it's a guys-only trip? He angled his body away from me, clutching the phone to his chest like a shield. His face was a mask of defensive anger. It's a private conversation. Kim, you shouldn't be snooping at my phone. I wasn't snooping. It lit up right here, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. You're hiding the screen. Luther, why are you hiding the screen? Because you're acting crazy, he shot back. It's not a big deal. Then let me see it, I challenged. If it's not a big deal, just show me the chat. No. The argument escalated from there. A tense, circular battle of his deflections and my stubborn refusal to let it go. This was different. This wasn't a subtle dig or a forgotten promise. This was a deliberate, elaborate lie. And I had caught him red-handed. Finally, backed into a corner, his face red with frustration. He exploded. Fine, you want to know so bad, fine, it's because Jessica doesn't like you. Okay, I was trying to protect your feelings. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I just stared at him, speechless. He was trying to protect my feelings by excluding me from my own anniversary trip and lying to my face about it. He must have seen the disbelief on my face because he fumbled with his phone, his hands shaking slightly. Look. Here. I'll prove it. He shoved the phone into my hands. I looked down at the screen. He had scrolled up to a private message exchange between him and Jessica from a few weeks ago. My eyes scanned the words, my brain struggling to process the sheer absurdity of it all. Jessica had written a long paragraph about how she felt uncomfortable with the idea of me being on the trip because the last time we were all out together, I had apparently been aggressively flirting with her boyfriend, Mark. I let out a short, incredulous laugh. It was a sound devoid of any humor. I had spoken maybe 10 words to Mark that entire night. He was a nice, Quiet guy. And I had absolutely zero interest in him. The accusation was so ludicrous, so completely fabricated. It was almost comical. This is insane, I whispered. This is a complete lie. Well, that's what she said, Luther said, shrugging, as if he were a neutral observer and not my husband. I looked up from the phone, my gaze locking onto his. This was the moment of truth. And you believed her? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Let me get this straight. Jessica, a woman you barely know, a woman I've heard you complain about a dozen times, tells you this insane story. And you believed her over me, your wife. He had the grace to look away. Unable to meet my eyes, he ran a hand through his hair. I don't know what I believed. Kim, I hate confrontation. I didn't want to cause any drama with Mark. It was just easier to tell you it was a guy's trip. Easier. That one word told me everything. He hadn't been protecting my feelings. He had been protecting his own comfort. He had sacrificed my feelings, my dignity, and our anniversary to avoid a few moments of awkwardness with his friend's manipulative girlfriend. He had weighed my hurt against his own discomfort, and my hurt was lighter. I didn't matter as much. Seeing he had lost, seeing the look on my face, he switched tactics. He tried to be the hero. Look, he said, his voice softening. Reaching for my hand, I pulled it away. It's fine. It's all fine. I just won't go. Simple. I'll tell them something came up. We'll do our own thing. Happy now. I looked at him. At this man I had promised to spend my life with. He thought canceling the trip was the solution. He thought that would fix it. He didn't understand, and I knew in that moment that he never would. The damage was done. The trip was never the point. The point was the choice he had made. The point was that when it came down to it, when he had to choose between standing up for me and taking the easy way out, he didn't even hesitate. He had shown me my exact value in his world. I was disposable. I didn't answer him. I couldn't. What was there to say happy now? He asked it as if my happiness was a simple switch he could flip. A leaky faucet he could fix. With one last turn of the wrench. He didn't see that the pipes had burst. That the foundation was flooded. That the whole house was collapsing around him. He just saw a drip. I stood up from the couch. The movement feeling slow and heavy. Like I was wading through deep water. I'm tired, I said. My voice, a stranger's, hollow and distant. I'm going to bed. I walked out of the room without looking back. I didn't see the confusion on his face, but I could feel it radiating behind me. A palpable heat of frustration. He probably thought I was being dramatic, punishing him with silence. He didn't understand that this wasn't a punishment. It was a resignation. That night, Islip was a foreign country I couldn't visit. I lay in our bed, feeling the immense distance and the few inches of mattress that separated us. Luther slept soundly, his breathing deep and even. The sleep of the truly untroubled. The gray fog of numbness I'd been living in for weeks had finally lifted, but what it revealed underneath was not anger or sadness. It was a sharp, cristalline clarity. A terrible, liberating certainty. I wasn't a jealous wife. I wasn't overthinking things. I was a low priority. An inconvenience to be managed. An afterthought. Sometime after 2 a.m., I slipped out of bed. The floorboards were cold beneath my bare feet. In the spare room that I used as my office, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The glow of the screen felt like a secret accomplice in the dark. Quiet house. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, and then I typed, 1-bedroom apartment rentals Columbus. The search results flooded the screen. I scrolled through listings in German Village, in Clintonville, in neighborhoods far enough away to feel like a different world. With each click, a strange sense of calm settled over me. This wasn't a fantasy. This wasn't an emotional reaction. This was logistics. This was the first step of a plan. The next morning, I waited until I heard the front door close, signaling Luther had left for work. I took a deep breath, picked up my phone, and called my best friend, Sarah. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, you," she said, her voice cheerful. "What's up?" I didn't waste time with small talk. "I'm leaving him. Sarah." The line was silent for a moment. But it wasn't a silence of surprise. It was a silence of understanding. She had seen the little things for years. The subtle dismissals, the way my light had dimmed. She never said anything. Always respecting my marriage. But I knew she saw it. "Okay," she said finally, her voice steady and sure. "What do you need?" The relief that washed over me was so intense it made my knees feel weak. "Help," I whispered. I need help to figure it all out." "I'm on my way," she said, and hung up. My second call was to my bank. My third was to a realtor who specialized in apartment rentals. My fourth was to a small, local moving company to get a quote. By the time Sarah arrived with 2 large coffees and a determined look on her face, I had a checklist. The first item on that list was the hardest: financial security. That afternoon, sitting at my desk with the door closed, I logged into our joint bank account. The number on the screen represented our shared future, the down payment for the house in the suburbs, the trip to Italy we'd always talked about, the comfortable retirement we were supposed to have. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the point of no return. My escape fund, the secret account I'd started, had a respectable but insufficient balance. It wasn't enough to live on for more than a couple of months. I navigated to the transfer page. I looked at the balance in our joint savings, did the math in my head, and typed in a number. Exactly half. Not a penny more. Not a penny less. This wasn't theft. This wasn't revenge. It was a separation of assets. My hand trembled as my cursor hovered over the confirm transfer button. I thought of the red heart emoji. I thought of his words. It was just easier. I clicked the button. The screen refreshed. Transfer successful. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for 3 years. Before I started the physical process of leaving, I needed to fortify myself. That evening, after Luther was asleep, I opened the Notes app on my phone. I scrolled to a file I had titled simply, Reminders. It was the secret list I had started months ago. A catalog of hurts. I forced myself to document whenever the gaslighting got so bad I started to doubt my own reality. The handshake, Nell digging her nails into my palm. The barbecue, calling my voice squeak like a little mouse. Luther changing the subject. The anniversary trip. A guys-only trip. A deliberatelier. Jessica's text. The insane accusation of flirting. Him believing it was plausible. The red heart. Thinking of you. I read each entry slowly. Each one was a small paper cut. Insignificant on its own. But together they represented a death by 1,000 cuts. This wasn't a list of grievances to be used in a fight. It was my why. It was the fuel I would need for the difficult days ahead. I closed the app. My resolve hardened into steel. The packing began the next day. It became a covert operation, a secret life I lived in the hours between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. I started with the things he would never notice. The books packed away in the attic, the winter clothes in the back of the closet, the sentimental trinkets from my childhood stored in a box on a high shelf. I bought a stack of plain cardboard boxes and moving tape. I worked quietly, efficiently, my movements precise. Each item I wrapped in paper and placed in a box felt like a piece of myself I was reclaiming. One afternoon, my heart nearly stopped when I heard the garage door open 2 hours earlier than usual. I had 3 boxes sitting in the middle of the spare room floor. In a panic, I shoved them into the closet, threw a blanket over them, and slammed the door just as he walked in. "Hey, I got done early," he said, walking into the office. "What are you up to?" "Oh, just decluttering," I said, my voice amazingly steady. "Spring cleaning a little early." He bought it. Of course he did. He saw a messy closet and a wife doing wifely things. He didn't see the architecture of a new life being built right under his nose. A week later, the realtor called. She'd found a place, a studio apartment in German Village, on the 3rd floor of a historic brick building. It was small. She warned me, but it had great light. I went to see it during my lunch break. The moment I stepped inside, I knew. The afternoon sun poured through a huge, floor-to-ceiling window, illuminating the polished hardwood floors. It smelled of fresh paint and old wood. It was small, yes, but it wasn't cluttered with unspoken resentments or the ghosts of broken promises. It was a blank canvas. It was quiet. It was safe. "I'll take it," I said, a real, genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in months. Signing the lease and holding the keys in my hand was a tangible victory. They felt heavy, solid, real, the weight of possibility. That week, as moving day approached, I could feel Luther watching me. A new tension had entered the house. He saw me cleaning, organizing, dusting shelves that hadn't been touched in years. "You're acting a little weird," he said one night, watching me scrub the inside of the refrigerator. "This cleaning obsession is a lot." I turned, giving him a tired smile. "I don't know," I said, the lie coming easily. "I guess I just feel like everything's so out of control lately. Cleaning just makes me feel like I have control over something." It was the perfect explanation. It fed right into his narrative of me being an emotional anxious woman who overthinks things. He nodded slowly, accepting it. He saw a wife on the edge of a breakdown, not one on the brink of a breakthrough. D-Day was a Friday. Luther had an all-day sales conference out of town. The timing was a gift from the universe. Sarah showed up at 9 a.m. sharp, her SUV empty and ready. The movers I'd hired for the few larger pieces, my desk, my grandmother's armchair, my bed frame, were efficient and professional. We worked in a blur of motion. Box after box, memory after memory, was carried out of the house. As the rooms emptied, they started to echo. The space where my design books used to be on the shelf was a dusty rectangle. The wall where a painting I'd bought in college once hung was now bare, a faded outline of its frame still visible. It was strange, watching my presence be so easily erased. By early afternoon, it was done. I stood in the doorway of the near-empty house. It was just a collection of his things now. It no longer felt like my home. It felt like his. Sarah put a hand on my shoulder. You ready? She asked gently. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I took one last look, then pulled the door shut behind me. I spent the rest of the afternoon in my new, sun-drenched apartment, directing the movers, unpacking the essentials. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the floor, Sarah gave me a long hug. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all, she said. And then she was gone. I was alone. Truly alone. The silence was vast. But it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I walked over to the large window and looked out at the quiet, tree-lined street. I stood there for a long time, just breathing. Then, I looked down at my left hand. The wedding ring felt heavy. A foreign object. For 3 years, it had been a part of me. A symbol of a promise. You will always be my number one. I slowly, deliberately, twisted the ring off my finger. It slid off with surprising ease. A bale. Indented line on my skin was the only sign it had ever been there. I walked over to the small kitchen counter and placed the gold band in the very center, where it would be the first thing he saw. I took out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I pulled up his contact, my thumb hovering over the message icon. Then I typed 2 sentences. Come home. We need to talk. I didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes. Maybe 30. Just enough time for the adrenaline to fade, leaving behind a strange and profound calm. I sat on the arm of the sofa, the only piece of furniture in the living room that felt even remotely like mine anymore. I didn't pace. I didn't check my phone. I just listened to the sounds of the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards settling, the quiet symphony of a life about to be left behind. I heard his car pull into the driveway. The familiar rumble of the engine cutting through the evening stillness. The sound of his keys in the lock was unnaturally loud in the silent house. The front door swung open. Kim, he called out, his voice laced with a weary annoyance. The tone of a man expecting a fight he didn't want to have. What's going on? Your text was... His voice trailed off as he stepped into the living room and finally saw it. He saw the emptiness first. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the bare walls where our wedding photos used to hang. In the empty corner where my grandmother's armchair had always been. The vacant shelves that once held my collection of art books. His confusion slowly morphed into a dawning horror. He looked like a stranger in his own home. A place that had been subtly, fundamentally altered. Then, his gaze fell to the coffee table. He saw the single gold band, gleaming under the lamplight. It sat there like a final, irrefutable piece of evidence. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He looked from the ring to my face, his eyes wide with a question he was suddenly terrified to ask. What's going on? Kim, he whispered. And this time, the annoyance was gone, replaced by the first tremor of genuine fear. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times, imagining 100 different ways it could go with yelling, with tears, with accusations. But now that it was here, all I felt was a serene and resolute quiet. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at him, the man I had once promised my forever to, and spoke the truth. I'm leaving, Luther. The words hung in the air between us. Simple and devastating. He shook his head. A quick, yarky motion, as if he could physically dislodge the reality of what I'd just said. Leaving, what are you talking about, like, to your mom's for the night, he asked. a desperate hopefulness in his voice. Look, I know you're mad about the trip. I told you. I'm not going. It's over. We can just forget about it. This was never about the trip, I said. And my voice was so calm it surprised even me. The trip was just the last page of a very long book. This is about the fact that I cannot spend the rest of my life in a relationship where I am always the last priority. I can't live in a house where my feelings are treated as an inconvenience. He just stared at me, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. He didn't get it. I could see him searching his mind for the right angle, the right argument to dismantle my resolve. He took a step forward, his hands held up in a placating gesture. Okay. I hear you, he said, trying on the voice of a reasonable negotiator. I messed up. I should have told you about Jessica. I should have defended you. But to leave. Isn't that a huge overreaction? He paused. And I could see the gears turning in his head as he finally landed on what he thought was the core of the issue. The one accusation that had always worked before. He looked at me. A flicker of his old, condescending certainty in his eyes. So that's it. Then he said, his voice quiet. After everything. This is all just because you're jealous of Nell. And there it was. The final, fatal miscalculation. The words that confirmed every doubt, every fear, every insecurity he had ever cultivated in me. He believed, right down to his bones, that my profound, soul-deep unhappiness was nothing more than petty, female jealousy. He hadn't heard a word I'd said. He was incapable of hearing it. A small, sad smile touched my lips. It wasn't a smile of mirth. It was a smile of pity. A smile of closure. In that single, breathtakingly tone-deaf question, he had set me completely and irrevocably free. No, Luther, I said, and my voice was gentle, like I was speaking to a child who couldn't grasp a simple concept. I'm not jealous. I'm just done. The finality in my voice seemed to finally pierce through his armor of self-delusion. The color drained from his face. The panic he'd been holding at bay flooded his eyes. Done, what do you mean? Done, he stammered, taking another step closer. You can't be done. We're married. We're us. He started to bargain, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. I'll fix it, I swear. I'll talk to Nell. I'll tell her she has to respect you. I'll cut her off if I have to. I'll tell Mark that Jessica is a manipulative liar. We'll go on our own trip. Just the two of us. Anywhere you want, we can go to Italy. Just don't do this. It was too late. He was offering to patch a hole in the roof when the house had already been swept away by a flood. You had 3 years of chances to do that. Luther, I said, my voice still quiet. Still even. You had hundreds of opportunities to choose me. At the BBQ. In the kitchen. On the couch. Every single time. You chose the path that was easiest for you. You chose your comfort over my heart. I'm not leaving because of what you did. I'm leaving because of who you are. That was the blow from which he couldn't recover. It was the truth. And we both knew it. I finally stood up, my legs feeling surprisingly strong. I walked over to the entryway where my purse and my car keys sat on the small table. They were the only things in the room that were still mine. My things are gone, I said, stating a simple fact. I have a new place. I'll email you a list of the furniture that's mine and we can arrange for movers to get it next week. The lawyers can handle the rest. He just stood there in the middle of the living room, looking small and lost among the ghosts of our life together. He looked at my hand. Holding my keys, he looked at my face, searching for a crack in my resolve. A flicker of doubt. He found none. "Kim, please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Don't." I opened the front door. The cool night air felt clean. Fresh. "Goodbye, Luther." I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out and pulled the door shut behind me. The soft, definitive click of the latch was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a cage door closing for the last time, with me on the outside. I walked to my car, my steps feeling light. I slid into the driver's seat and just sat there for a moment, my hands resting on the steering wheel. I looked at the house, the warm light glowing in the windows, a place that held so much of my past, so much of my pain. I didn't cry. I didn't feel a surge of anger or a pang of regret. Instead, I took a deep, shuddering breath, and as I exhaled, I felt a weight I didn't even know I was carrying lift from my shoulders. It was the weight of constantly trying, of constantly hoping, of constantly being disappointed. It was the weight of making myself smaller to make him feel comfortable. And now, it was gone. A few months later, my new apartment felt like home. It was filled with my colors, my art, my music. It was a space that was entirely, unapologetically mine. I was thriving at work, taking on new projects with a renewed passion. I was reconnecting with friends I had let drift away. I was rediscovering the woman I was before I became his wife. One evening, I was sitting by my big window, sketching in my notepad and enjoying the quiet, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "You will not believe this. Just heard from a friend that Mark finally dumped Jessica. Apparently, her crazy got too crazy even for him. Oh. And get this, Luther keeps posting these sad, cryptic song lyrics on his social media. It's embarrassing." I read the message, and a small, private smile touched my lips. There was a time when that news would have filled me with a sense of vindictive pleasure. But now, it felt like a dispatch from a distant country I no longer had any interest in visiting. Their drama, their consequences, their unhappiness, it had nothing to do with me anymore. I typed back a simple reply, "Wow. Hope everyone is okay." Then I put my phone down, turned back to my sketchbook, and continued my drawing. The sun was setting, filling my small, peaceful apartment with a warm, golden light. And I felt happy, truly, deeply happy. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't about watching him fail. It was about building a life so full and beautiful that I simply didn't have time to look back.